On today's podcast, we have the privilege of having Tom Pessemier, a 20-year mortgage lending professional, share a little bit about the home buying process and what it is like to be a lender. Make sure you stay tuned. There's a lot of great information that Tom's going to share. As a mortgage broker, Tom helps give advice to those who are looking to find options to buy a home, to purchase a home. I know he's worked with military veterans and also first-time home buyers. So he really has a broad spectrum of people that he can help and serve. So Tom, can you share a little bit about what got you into the mortgage industry and sort of give us a little bit of your background and your story?
Sure. And Brandon, thank you for having me on your show. You do a great job with these. It's really good to see you again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So what got me into the business? Gosh, I got started in May of 2003, back when you could fog a mirror, you could get a mortgage kind
Yeah,
of life at
yeah,
that point. This was previous to mortgage loan originators needing to even hold licenses. So it was
yeah.
literally a matter of, I had a buddy that was in the mortgage business. I took an aptitude test and it kind of pointed me in that direction.
Yep.
2 weeks and a day after taking that aptitude test, I was behind my desk at a mortgage company. It was crazy. So it's kind of in a nutshell, but yeah.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. That's unbelievable. Now, I know that having been in the mortgage industry for a while, you've gone through the ups and downs of the market during the home buying or homeowner crisis in 2008 and 9. You saw a lot of change in the industry, and you just mentioned, not having to have a license, and now it's very different. It's a highly regulated process, or much more regulated. What have you sort of seen through your years of experience, the ups and downs? I mean, is buying a house right now still a good idea, or should people back off and sort of wait?
That's a really good question. I actually get that one just about every day
Yeah,
from real life home buyers. So some of the stuff that I saw during the Great Recession and some of the other waves and cycles that we've had, is time pretty much fixes everything in real
yeah,
estate. And it doesn't take long if you jump on Google or any reputable website that gives data on real estate facts. There are more millionaires that have been created in the United States from real estate than anything, like
right.
anything. It's not even close. So I think really, if you're looking for a short-term situation, maybe within a year or two, might not be the right thing to invest in real estate. But that's so rare. And honestly, most people that are needing a place to, needing a roof over their heads, over their families' heads, and they want some stability, having a home that they own to where they don't have to worry about rents going up and stuff like that can really have a big impact for people. So I do think it's a really good time to buy right now. I think late last year, we saw when rates really went up, we started seeing things really slow down in terms of just rate of appreciation. We're actually still seeing rates of appreciation if you look at the data correctly. A lot of the media has been saying that we've seen some depreciation when actually we haven't. We've seen a reduction in the median home sale price,
Okay.
which is a totally different metric than rates of appreciation.
Yeah. Can you explain that a little bit better? So if I was a novice and thinking through all the things that are being said on TV right now, how would you explain the difference between those two numbers for the average consumer?
Well, so median home sale price was really inflated because a lot of the buyers in the higher end homes were really, really active when rates were really low.
Right.
And a lot of those people already have their homes. They're buying more on an elective level rather than I'm moving because my family's grown or I'm
Right.
moving because my job's moved me somewhere else. So median home price is basically you've got that kind of sweet spot, middle market range, where everybody is always wanting those homes in that market, right? So
Sure.
might be depending on what part of the country you're in, that might be 300,000, it might be 600,000, but it's kind of that sweet spot where you've got the first time home buyers trying to compete with the investors, trying to compete with the move up in buyers, trying to compete with the people that are empty nesters, that type of thing. Whereas rate of appreciation is something totally different. It's basically looking at what are our homes actually doing in terms of compared to what the same home, not just buckets of homes, right?
Right.
So same home that was, in, um, let's say we're, some Northern Virginia, let's say
Hmm.
that home today is on average somewhere between 5 and 8% above what it was last year
Okay.
when it gets specific. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense, and I think that's helpful for people who see one story on TV, and then when you look at the facts and what really sort of matters to the individual, you get a different story. So I think that clarity is good. Now, Tom, I've owned a home, and I know that finding the right lender is central to the home buying process, and it can make the difference between a great experience and a really, really stressful experience. You being a mortgage lender for a long time, how do you make the mortgage buying or the home buying experience superior to others? And what sort of are the key things that make the mortgage process a smooth process?
That's a great question. And you're right. We're not all one size fits all necessarily.
Yeah.
One of the things I find when people are buying a home that really helps to alleviate a lot of stress is just communicating, just
Yeah.
being in front of people and not being that sort of, stuffed shirt behind a big desk, looking down over my spectacles at people,
Yeah.
making them feel like they're not intelligent because they're not in finance. I think a lot of people will come to me. I get a lot of apologies for the questions that they're asking. And I always just stop them during that conversation. And I go, listen, I think the only dumb question you can ask, or the only dumb question that is out there is the one that you don't ask. So
Right.
that's honestly, that's what we're here for. If people didn't have a need to have their questions answered, why wouldn't they just have robots doing mortgages for people?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that gets to a different question that I was going to ask of in a little bit, but I'll ask it now. Why don't people, or why shouldn't people purchase online and try to do a completely online experience? I mean, we know a couple of the big companies that have, moved into the market trying to do mortgages online. It doesn't seem like it's a good idea to take your biggest financial asset that you'll probably own until you hit, you know, later on in your working career. Why would you want to do that online, and why shouldn't you do that online?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, honestly, I think the best mortgage companies have a nice balance between the online experience and the actual human beings behind the scenes that are actually doing the work and the analysis and the question and answer and helping people really personalize their mortgages into their goals. So, but as far as the online piece, there's not a fully online version of mortgages. I came from a mortgage company that was one of the big things they were doing. Came out with the first digital mortgage in the
Right.
world. A lot of fanfare. It was cool. The technology was cool, but at the end of the day, I think people, when push comes to shove in a real estate transaction, and you need a lender that's going to pick up the phone and talk to the listing agent when the listing agent has 15 offers on a home, and you've got buyers just clamoring over these listings because the market's still pretty limited in terms of inventory right now. It really helps to have a human being loan officer that can speak coherently to other parties involved in a transaction. It's more than a transaction, it's people's home.
Yeah. I remember always thinking, we have more access to information than ever, and we have it at the fingertips of our phones. And yet, there's a big difference between information and wisdom. And, what I would imagine your role most of all is providing wisdom throughout the process in order to give, that type of value versus simply, you're not just an order taker. You're not just somebody who's, punching numbers in and spitting numbers out. You're advising somebody on that home that, it's a huge experience. So, I think that makes perfect sense of why you'd want to work with a person, face to face, or, personally, where you can get them at any time.
Yeah, and frankly, when it comes down to the rates and terms and all that stuff, in the world I live in now as a mortgage broker, most of those online lenders, they can't even compete with what we're able to offer in terms of rate and
Right.
fee structure, and the experience is better, and they've got somebody in really a team of people that are helping concierge them through to till they've got keys in hand.
Tom, I read an interesting article this week about millennials, and millennials are often described as the first American generation that will do worse financially than its parents. But this week, the Atlantic magazine reported household of income that is reported by millennials. They're actually making the same type of money that previous generations did at their same age. So the boomers and the Gen Xers, there's not a real drop off on sort of the income level. And that's contrary to the narrative that we heard over the last 10 years. And I think the Atlantic was making a very interesting case that we've thought about the millennials as being a renter generation and a financially poorer generation, but it seems like the older they get, the less that's coming true. How have you sort of seen that? And then there should be probably a massive wave of millennials that are going to start making their first home purchase. So how has that affected the industry, and how would you advise millennials that, are looking to buy their first home?
Well, that's a great question, Brandon. I've got two daughters that are millennials,
Yeah.
and they're a couple of the good ones. And there are, I think maybe that generation has gotten a bad rap, just like my generation got a bad rap when we were young. We've all been
Yeah.
kids once, right?
Yeah.
So I think we're just in a totally different age. There's a lot that I think people are still learning as we go, like it's always been, right? Except that now everything's under the microscope of digital technology, and people can't just do goofy stuff and have it disappear
Yeah.
into their past anymore when you've got social media and TikTok and all this stuff flying around. But I have done mortgages for a lot of really awesome millennials. Um, Done a lot of loans for a bunch of, you know, maybe less sophisticated Gen Xers, and vice versa. I mean, I think you can find people in every generation that are going to be cream of the crop, and maybe not so much. But I think housing is a basic need, right?
Yeah.
I think people in America, the American dream has always been to own your own home. And I think our, current young generation that's coming up right now, there's a lot that they saw and learned from their parents through their, iPhone screens or whatever that stuck. Good stuff, good American
Yeah.
stuff. And I think we're going to see a lot of those people continuing to buy and invest in real estate. And I think they're going to carry on that legacy that their parents and grandparents got them started with.
Yeah. I think there's been a lot of fear too about, what this next generation is going to look like and how they're going to be different. And in many ways, I think you're right. It's probably just the same thing that every generation previously has felt, the anxiety of somebody else taking on the role of leadership and, taking, jobs that at one point were theirs and now they're handing off, to a different generation. And a lot of the social media and 24-hour news probably lends itself to being more fearful in the future. And yet, a lot of the numbers are looking the same, as they did generation after generation. So I think I'm bullish on what America is going to look like over the next 20 years. And, I don't know about you, but it sounds like you are too.
Absolutely. No question. In fact, I was just talking to a young guy the other day who got started in business in Florida. He's younger than my oldest daughter,
Mm-hmm.
and he got started in this business where he's basically fixing uh, a specific component on homes, and he's
Right.
making a killing because he came up with an idea. I mean, how much more American can you get than that? And the guy's going to buy his first home younger than I was when I bought my first home, and I was a kid when I bought my first place.
Yeah, me too. I think about my age. I think I was 23 when I bought my first home, and I cannot imagine giving a loan to me at that age. Now thinking back at it, but I got it, and it was no problem. And I guess we ought to give more credit to those who are young than we often do.
I'm with you there, 100%. I think I was 23 when I bought my first place too, and my mother and father-in-law sold real estate, and they gifted us their commission so that we could
Oh,
actually make
great.
it happen because we didn't have our stuff together. We had two little kids, and it was crazy. So, but thankfully somebody cared enough to actually help us get in.
Yeah.
Aside from the in-laws, the loan officer did a really great job for us, and I'm
Yeah.
grateful to this day for that.
No, that's awesome. That's great. So, Tom, what do you love about providing mortgages, and what in your career really has been a unique benefit or part of the experience of serving people with home loans?
Um, Gosh, I've been at this next month will be 20 years doing
Yeah,
this, and it's one of those things where I better love it, or I probably hated my life for the last couple decades. It's really afforded me a lot of really just amazing things in my life that I've been able to take. I've met people that I would have never met before. That I mean, you get pretty tight with somebody when you're
sure.
working on something as intimate and basic as a housing situation. I'm tearing into all kinds of details for people that initially I think when we first have that first conversation, you really need to be somebody that they can feel like they trust. Because I mean, gosh, I mean, starting with the social security number, I don't know about you, but I don't give that
Yeah,
away just to anybody.
yeah,
So, but as far as just the benefits of doing this, I honestly I feel like I wish more of my friends would get into this industry that I'm in because it's done so much for me and my family. It's been a great living. It's been a great life. I can travel when I'm working. My wife
right.
and I were just in Puerto Rico a few weeks ago for a mortgage conference, and I had clients that we were dealing with at the time, and I told them all where I was, but it wasn't like I was MIA because of the nature of how things work. Wherever I can establish a secure connection, I can work, and it's a really cool thing, and I love it. And being able to really help people distill down their options from something where they're like they don't even know which end is up. A lot of
Right.
times when I have the first conversation with them, and it's really fun because it's not like I'm this big powerful wizard behind the curtain, but being able to help clarify these things for people so they can make their own informed decisions,
Yeah.
that's really rewarding for me, seeing that light go on in their minds when we're having those conversations.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's great. So, Tom, making this a career and living in it, as a mortgage broker, I know that you've built countless networks of friends and real estate agents, customers, clients, and most of your work is probably referral at this point. What was it that helped you build up that network, and what is sort of crucial to maintaining it?
Well, you're right, and it's one of those things that for those of the people in the industry that have been primarily focused on refinances and waiting for the phone to ring, I have a lot of friends that used to be in this
Yeah.
industry just because they maybe somebody didn't take the time to teach them how to build their business by referral. I come from a family of small business owners, small and moderate sized businesses, and that's kind of how our world always turned when I was growing up. You take good care of people
Yeah.
and they come back. And if you ask them nicely, they might bring back a friend or two while they're at it, right?
Yeah.
And then you help them out, and it makes them feel good because then they were able to share a good experience with somebody else as well. But as far as just establishing the networks, so I've lived in 3 states. I'm currently licensed in 14 states,
Mm-hmm.
and it's all been organic. I haven't just gone on the map and gone, oh, I think I'm going to do that. It's been, from financial planner. It's been from a Mary Kay rep. It's been from, a military base that I just had a really great group of people that were kind enough to squawk about me to all their buddies,
Yeah.
stuff like that. But most of my business comes in off referral from real estate agents that are focused on working with buyers. I need them as much as they need me.
Yeah.
So it's a match made in heaven, but that's kind of how my world turns. And it's been a really, really interesting journey, I think, just going through all that and getting to know people and earning people's trust. It's not something that's automatic. You really have
Yeah.
to stay at it all the time.
And I think that's one of the underrated things of being in professional services. Like, I work in insurance, you work in, mortgages, real estate agents. You can almost build better relationships with the people around you that serve in a different capacity where you can add value. And, that can be just as rewarding and even, sometimes more than working with one specific client, one time. That it's not
Absolutely.
transactional, it's relational.
That's
And
it.
it's really nice to be able to serve those types of individuals over and over again.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more.
So, Tom, at the end of every podcast, I always ask the question of the guest on our podcast, what is it that you have been reading and what have you been learning recently that's really helped you in either your business or your career or even your life? So this is your opportunity to share what you've been reading or what you've been learning recently.
Awesome. Thanks, Brandon. Well, a couple of things actually. So, a lot of people have heard of this guy, Brian Tracy.
Yep.
This is his newest book. It's called Unstoppable. Absolutely incredible book. I'm about a third of the way into this book so far, and it's just absolutely amazing. Motivation secrets. You need to develop courage, confidence, and a positive mental attitude. This
Yeah.
guy actually wrote the book on goals. It's called Goals.
Yeah. I've read it.
Have you?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fantastic book. We actually have it in Audible and in written format. My wife and I
Yeah.
read it once or twice a year. It's such a great book. And this is another really, really good book on him. A lot of it's reminiscent of goals, and
Sure.
it's got other stuff in it too. And if you don't mind indulging me, I'd like to share another one too. Is that
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
what to Say When You Talk to Yourself by
Okay.
Shad Homestetter. My coach, I have an amazing coach. Her name is
Mm-hmm.
Irene Duford. She's with an organization called the Freedom Club. Um, she actually just did a podcast with Dr. Shad
Oh,
Helmstetter,
cool. Okay.
and absolutely incredible book. It's really big on just self-talk. It sounds kind of I don't know, it might sound a little bit juvenile
Right.
just saying it that way, but it really isn't. And this book is just it's incredible. How many times do you throughout your life have things that just hit you upside the head and you're trying to figure out, again, kind of what end is up, whether it's career, whether it's health, whether it's family, relationships, whatever. And keeping your head straight. In my world, when
Yeah.
I'm dealing with people that have such a great need as real estate, I've got to keep my head straight. Otherwise, how am I'm not able to really help people to the fullest
Yeah.
extent. So this book has been absolutely incredible. Just really refocusing and redirecting what you actually are saying to yourself and your own
Yeah.
internal dialogue when things happen. What's your reaction?
Yeah.
So a couple great books. Highly recommend both of them.
Yeah, I think that's a great word. And as we end the podcast with the idea of what we say to ourselves, I know that growing up and even as an adult, the importance of sort of your own image or your own self value. And we often can be so discouraging with the way that we think about ourselves, and having that positive mental image or that self-talk of positivity, it does sometimes get a bad rap, but it's so true. The way that we talk about ourselves, the way that we think to ourselves determines so much about who we are and what we become. And I would imagine that being, I haven't read that book, but it sounds like it would be a very, very valuable tool for somebody who's you know either entering the workforce or who's struggling to figure out who they want to become, or what they need to do in order to take next steps. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and honestly, I think it's even good for the high level professional as well.
Yeah.
Just so much stuff that is, I mean, you can call it basic, you can call it whatever you want, but stuff that's really foundational to how we operate on our day to day, how we respond to things that come at us. There's a
Yeah.
lot of stuff that's outside of all of our control, no matter
Yeah.
what we do. But what we can control is how we react to stuff, and that's kind of what the book's about.
Yeah. And I'm going to end on this, Tom. I think that there's a power to being reminded, even more so than taught. Most of the time, we need to be reminded of basic things and not taught new things. We're eager to learn new stuff, but if we would just do the basics, we'd be in such a much better place most of the
That's so
time.
true. Very well said.
So cool. Well, Tom, I very much appreciate your time. If there's anything in parting that you'd like to say about how people can get in touch with you or how they could work with you in the future, please feel free right now to share that information and let us know, how to get in touch with you.
Well, thanks, Brandon. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, the best way for people to reach out to me, I've got a contact me page on my website, which is just my name, tompessemier.com.
Yeah.
Any questions anybody has as far as residential real estate financing, I'd love to help. A lot of people have questions about investing. A lot of people have questions about credit, down
Yeah.
payment options, things like that. Um, those are all things that I'd be happy to help with. So I appreciate that. Thanks a lot, Brandon.
Yeah, no problem. We'll have that link in the about or the comment section of any of these videos that we put out. And Tom, thank you so much for your time. You take care.
Likewise. Thank you, Brandon. Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks.